Call to order the City Council work session for City of East Grand Forks for Tuesday, December 8th, 2020. Is now 5 o'clock. With City Clerk, please call roll.
Here, Steve Gander.
Here.
Council President Paulson.
Here.
Council Vice President Pat Russell. Here. Council members Clarence Vetter.
Here.
Dale Helms.
Here.
Tim Riopel.
Here.
Tim Johnson.
Here.
Mark Demers.
Present.
Does term. Quorum number 1, request to apply for Mighty Duck Grant. Reid.
Thank you, Mr. President. Council members, good evening. So in your packet, I included some of the project guidelines for Mighty Duck grant dollars. I think some of you may remember 5 or 6 years ago, it was a pretty common grant in those years that had been funded by the Minnesota State Legislature, primarily to help communities that have R22 that need to be replaced. And we were fortunate this year in the bonding bill that was passed in one of the special sessions, there was $2 million included in allocation for that grant again. Of the $2 million, it's expected that $1 million of that will be divvied out to greater Minnesota communities, while the other $1 million will be allocated for the metro area. So it's not a huge base or a dollar amount for award to work with. But I do think that we can get together timing-wise locally and potentially take advantage of some of the work that we've been doing with the NHL and some of their partners in post the Kraft Hockeyville Award and be able to bring a grant application together for replacement of R22 at the Civic Center. By the grant guidelines, first of all, the Civic Center, to remind you all, that is an indirect R22 plant. So we would be eligible for a dollar-for-dollar match up to $250,000 to go towards that R22 retrofit. I do not, unfortunately, in the short turnaround since this grant has been public, we just got the first kind of word of it to us early last week, at least to include what the guidelines look like for application. I don't have a project budget to share with you yet, but certainly by the time we vote on it in early January, if you wanted to see it move forward, I would have something. It's expected the plan for the retrofit at the Civic Center with that refrigeration would make use of some of the components that are in the room, namely one being the compressors that are there. This Opteon refrigerant that I included in the packet is a relatively new, when I say that, it's a couple of years old, drop-in refrigerant that can be used in R22 plants. It's one, I think even when we started talking about our need to make arena improvements, that it wasn't, it was, if it was available, it was very new to the market or new to the arena market at that time, and there was mixed reviews on how it would work in an R22 system. It sounds like it's had really positive reviews. The NHL, of course, backs it and has made some good transitions in some of their arenas with it. And it does present, it would need still for our Civic Center to have some improvements made or some changes made to the ice system, but we'd be able to make use of some of the components there. So the price estimate I'm expecting to see as a budget at least is somewhere in the area of $250,000 to $300,000 would cover a retrofit of the ice plant system at the Civic Center. So that would include things like a new chiller barrel, new condenser fans, that the fan units that sit outside would be changed over for new settings. A few different of the components changed, mainly made bigger so that we had more cooling capacity. That's one of the things that's been found in the troubleshooting at the Civic Center just in the last couple of years, is that some of those components, like the chiller barrel, is largely undersized for the size compressors we have. And we think that's one of the things that historically has caused some of the problems with our compressors. So anyway, at first glance, this has all started to move really fast in the last couple of weeks, but I do really believe that this could be a good option for us. I'd like to, in the next couple of weeks, if you guys all want me to move forward, is still take this proposal that I'm getting from our maintenance company that's been looking at it and make sure that the NHL's engineers get a chance to look at what the maintenance person is suggesting. I have not had a chance to do that. I just got some of the proposal from the maintenance company this morning still. But I'd like to do that and do some checks and balances to make sure that it's something that I think is a long-term fix for the Civic Center. But I would say at this point, I think it's promising, and promising enough that I wanted to at least bring it to all of you to see if you would like us to prepare a grant application for this year. Recognizing it's a quick turnaround, the grant application is due January 11th. Some of the drawbacks of it, of course, is they're looking for shovel-ready projects that would be, potentially something that we could get started on this coming summer, in the summer of 2021, to have completed before the next ice season. So some moving parts for sure, but again, something I think is promising. So one is just to get your input on that as it relates to the retrofit idea itself. Two, if we're going to move forward, the idea of where we would use the local dollars, how we'd find the local dollars for the match. In the RCA, I included certainly the $30,000 prize we won from Kraft Hockeyville could be used. And beyond that, Ms. Anderson and I have discussed that there is an excess or an additional revenue from the local sales tax that we used for the swimming pool, because when the pool loan was paid off, the tax still had to continue till the end of the third quarter, which was the end of September. So there's an excess there of about $400,000 that potentially could be used for a project to help us on a local match like this. So I think from there, just a couple more points to make sure as we talk about the retrofit idea, if anybody has questions on it. I do want to make sure it's important to point out, if we go forward with a retrofit idea like this, there are a couple of concessions that we need to make sure we know about if and when we have the opportunity to pursue further improvements at the Civic Center. One of the things that in this price that is being considered is that as part of the new condensing units, we would lose the heat reclaim that we have off the compressor. It would make the compressor, it would help the compressor operation, the ice plant operation, but we would lose that heat reclaim that we use right now. We reclaim excess heat off the compressor to heat the spectator area, and that's supplemented by an electric heating system. So I would need to make sure in the next few weeks that that's something I think it would be able to continue with electric heat, but certainly recognizing that electric heat is expensive. In our plan for arena improvements, that's something that is being considered is switching that boiler to a high efficiency natural gas powered boiler system. So those two things certainly could go hand in hand and work very well together. The other piece of it is assuming that the electric motors that power those compressors are in good condition, that all the circuits are still good. We could certainly have those tested before a project ever was to move forward to make sure that that's the case. The maintenance people believe it is. And then thirdly and lastly is assuming that the floor is in good condition. That would be an additional cost at a point going forward if we decided we needed to replace that. And that, of course, is, as you all know from our previous arena plans, is one of the very, very expensive pieces of the ice plant system. But at this point, we feel like the floor is in good condition over there, even though it is 25 years old. So with that, I think I'll just take any questions or feedback, thoughts from any of you.
I think first thing what the applies to the Mighty Duck grant, I think you need to move forward with that. Just find out, the avenues. If you can hopefully get something with that, just keep pushing on, find different alternatives for funding. When it comes to the alternative, the retrofit, I think, I know you and I talked earlier about this, but I think bringing it back next month so that we can meet the deadlines that we have to meet with with St. Paul, getting stuff, move forward with that and not being behind the eight ball. I think just keep doing what you're doing and keep moving forward so that we can, looking at alternatives, looking at alternative ways to pay for it. When you bring it back next month at the first work session, I would appreciate you bringing back the funds where they're going to come from, what, how you would do it, and I guess, anything that pertains to how the city as a whole is going to have to take care of the matching stuff. So, anybody else have anything? Dale?
I have one. Thank you, Mr. President. Reid, I don't know if you might have mentioned it and I missed it, but what's the reasoning that you'll lose that heat source off of those when you switch it over? What are they doing different?
Yeah, so I will do my best to explain it. It's a technical thing that I hope I get the terminology correct. But right now, the way it's set up, we have liquid-cooled condensers. So the glycol that runs through the floor to cool the ring, when it comes back to the compressor room, it flows through the piping that is included with the condensing fans that sit outside, and then back to the compressor. So it's all part of that circuit. And when that hot glycol comes back to the room, anything that the condensing fans can't cool, we can reclaim it and pump it through our air handlers to heat the space. When the retrofit is made, we would remove the liquid-cooled portion of the condenser, and it would become an air-cooled. So we would no longer have the heat coming off of the glycol to be able to reclaim and then put back into the airspace. What it does, right now, one of the things from an ice perspective at the Civic Center, we see when we have bigger crowds, specifically bigger crowds, or warmer temperatures, we have a hard time getting the cooling capacity we need for the ice to freeze as quick as we would like it. If you're used to seeing a heavily crowded boys hockey game, that's the best example I could give. A lot of time we'll be halfway through the period and we still have water standing on the ice. And that is partially related, from just what I've learned, partially related to the fact that we are not able to turn the glycol from hot back to cold quick enough. And one of the answers to help that is to remove the liquid cooled portion of it and make it an air cooled, because it would shorten the circuit. Essentially, instead of cooling the glycol outside with fans, we would only be, it would be a closed circuit. We'd only be using the primary refrigerant, which would be our 449A. We would be cooling that and then using that only to cool the glycol. So I hope I did justice to that, but essentially it would eliminate the glycol on the floor from being in a loop that would go outside and then in turn be able to be recovered for heat reclaim. It removes a step of the process, and in that step, that's what we would lose in the heat reclaim portion of it.
So the new retrofit will be better for the ice then?
That is the full hope, intent, and understanding is that the retrofit will give us more cooling capacity and more efficiency from an ice perspective. But what we gain in that, we may lose a little bit in heating efficiency for the heating space.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything at this time? See none, sir. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Move on to number 2. Consider 2025 Transportation Alternative Program application for SafeKids. Ms. Ellis.
Good evening, Mayor, President, Council members. Every year, MnDOT opens up an application for transportation alternatives. In the past 4 or 5 years, they've combined like their parks, trails, sidewalks program with the SafeKids or Safe Roads School program. And over a number of years, we have been pretty successful at getting some grant funding through this TAP application with both Safe Roads to School and with some transportation alternative sidewalks. SafeKids is one of a valuable member of our community. They do a lot of great work for our schools, our transportation planning, our public safety, and we'd like to continue helping to fund that program, whether it be through some sort of a donation or with the ability for them to apply for this MnDOT grant application. The way the TAP application works is they open it up in the fall. It's 4 years out. So we would be applying for funds in 2025, which is the MnDOT fiscal year. So it would start in the summer, July 1st of 2024. What Karma has prepared is a letter of intent. They told her she can move forward. The problem with the MnDOT application is that she cannot apply for it alone. It has to be a government agency that acts as the sponsor. And so she's asked if the city of East Grand Forks would be willing to sponsor her Safe Routes to School program. If you look at the application, what these funds would be used for would be not only to help with the East Grand Forks School District, but also with neighboring communities. And so when she's applying for the grant at an 80-20 split, the 80% would come from the state if it's awarded, and then 20% would have to be guaranteed by the city of East Grand Forks. However, those 20% local matching funds, she would try to obtain through the different communities, school district, etc., even All True, which SafeKids is based out of. And so there may not be a local share that the city is required to provide, but we still have to guarantee that if she's awarded that 20% will be paid for with some sort of local dollars. So that's what I've brought forward today, is to see if you would be willing to act as sponsor. We've sponsored in the past. We've had no issues. We have been awarded grants. They're very successful and integral to our SafeKids program here in town for the school districts. And I also have invited Karma Hansen to sit in on the meeting if you have any questions for her. So if you have anything, go ahead and ask me or Karma if you need to.
Anybody have any questions at this time? Ms. Hanson, do you have anything to add to that at all, ma'am? Give you an opportunity to speak. If not,
Yeah, thank you, Council. I don't really have anything to add. I think Nancy articulated very clearly what we're looking for. The grant application is due in early January, so if there are any modifications or changes or anything like that you would like to see put into it, we certainly have time to make those changes, but wanted to at least have the bulk of the grant written and ready to submit today for your consideration.
okay. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else have anything? I see none. So, thank you so much.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay. Move on to number 3, discussion on 2021 budget. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. And November 24th, we talked about budgets, and expenditures were over revenues by about $505,000. And we were set with the charge from the council to get that to $250,000 or somewhere around there. So department heads and Mr. Murphy, we got together and we cut back on some of the items that we had. We sharpened the pencils a little bit, and we got it to $253,777. And I did give a list of the changes that we made that were made before, from 2020 to 2021, and then also from November 24th until today. And just checking to see if you have any questions on that, or if everybody's comfortable with that, or just like to hear some discussion on that, please.
Anybody have any questions for her? Mr. Demers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do we know where we're at kind of year to date in 2020 for fund balance? Do we know, like, what's the impact that CARES funding or any of those type of things have had on budget?
You beat me to it. That was my next comment. So I have been looking at that. Last year when we did our budget, we looked at expenditures over revenues of about $182,000. I have been monitoring that, and my best guess is that we would break even and maybe even have a fund balance. However, I'm don't want to say that for sure because with everything going on with CARES dollars, which we've already spent, I don't think there'll be a lot of expenses that will come before the end of the year. So I was going to plan on giving you some more numbers next week, but what we would like to do is that as department heads, that last year we said we would have $182,000 out of fund balance for 2020, that if we do break even or have a fund balance, we would encourage or like the council maybe to amend the budget when we have those final numbers in February or March, and maybe add back in some of those capital items that we took out to get it to the 250. And those capital items were police SUV, parks pickup, parks playground equipment, public works mower with a cab. Those would be the items that we maybe would like to put back in the budget if 2020 comes out as I expect.
Anything else, sir?
Yeah, I guess the only thing is to do that.
Can you turn your mic on?
Yeah, we can do that, and it seems like we can always buy more stuff with the stuff we have left over that we're probably going to have. But we can't ever seem like we can just lower our rates far enough so we don't have that amount. So just looking back, it seems like we're growing at a pretty good clip here. You know, we've got expenditures growing, I think, 1.8 over last year, I think is, or 1.8 over 2017 from 4 years ago. I think we've got to kind of start working on that expenditure side some more going forward. I don't know where the answer is right now, but it just seems like we're headed for some big numbers in the future. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions at this time? Karla, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Just for the public, that I did put in the spreadsheet how there was a 4% increase in wages and benefits, and that is typically where most of our increases every year is typically in that 4 to 5 or 6% range. Insurance went up, so the city did pay the 4%. Employees did pay the rest of the increase in the insurance, and that we've kept most of our supplies and travel have stayed where we're at from 2019 to 2020 and to 2021.
Mayor.
I would just include, and we've had this conversation before, but this is another year where we lost some LGA, somewhere in the neighborhood of $80,000, and that's about 1.5 points or a little more of our revenue that's lost against the levy anyhow. And so the ability to keep this down at 5, hopefully keep it close to that 3 for an average property owner, and still be able to absorb that 1.5 points loss in LGA revenue from the state, I'd say you guys have done a good job. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything at this time? All right, thank you. Ms. Anderson? I know Mr. Vetter wanted to say something quick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our restaurants are still closed down. They are open for delivery or pickup, and in light of that, I did reach out to the Spud Junior and ask to have some hors d'oeuvres delivered, and I'd like to extend a thank you to them and encourage everyone in town to support your restaurants while they're still closed down and do some pickup or delivery. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Helms, second by Mr. Vetter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried, means adjourned.